Hi. So today, today we're doing this kind of like interview or like just joint stream, I guess, with Yanka, and she's a big fan of React Server components. You probably saw her tweeting about React Server components. So that's why we're here. We're just going to talk about it and just like this thumbnail that I did, I was thinking like what I could name it, and uh, a lot of people who are just like working on their SPA on Create React App, right? That they are sitting on the sidelines and like watching React Server components happening, and they're like, is it going to blow up in a good way or is it going to blow up in a bad way? Are we like missing something out, or like is it going to be like a real thing? So I guess that's kind of like the discussion I want to have. Just to talk about like what what are we expecting from them, and to go deeper into kind of like implementation, and maybe if we have time, maybe like compare it to some other solutions and not solutions. I don't know how to say it, but yeah. Yanka, can you just like talk a few moments about like who you are, or like why are you so interested in all of this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, hi everybody. If there's and I don't know. I just do front end stuff, but I've been programming for like a good part of my life. And I've always just been like a freak about computers. And like if I if something catches my eye, like some kind of technology, I tend to like get very into it. Like it's gotta like rub the right part of my brain, and then I get like extremely into it. And I think this is kind of like what happened with, like with React originally when I read about it, when like I saw the programming model and whatnot. And I guess now it's kind of happening again with this new iteration. Like I also did I didn't always do front end stuff. I did a lot of Python and like some Haskell and some weird stuff. But I think front end is where it's at for me, because it's like you know that's where the most interesting stuff is happening, because everything everywhere else is boring.
Right. That's where we plug JavaScript, days since JavaScript framework, right? This one.
Wait, which one is this? Hold on, I don't remember this one. I don't remember this joke.
So it's a website that's called Days since new JavaScript framework was released, and
Mhm.
it's like yeah, it's updated daily, and it just shows zero every day.
That's very good. That's very like and I don't know, and people make fun of like the JavaScript world for always coming up with a new thing, but it's like, but there's always new things. That's fun. I like it.
Yeah, that's
If
cool.
someone's not.
I was actually like rewatching a regional like video with Dan and Lauren where they were showing like this notes app, and it was like, oh, like it was, I guess, like already 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple years back. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember when you kind of like started looking into React Server components kind of like seriously?
So, well, to be honest, I think I started looking into it when they dropped in the next in some
Hmm.
experimental form. Because like, to be perfectly honest, like I remember seeing that demo, and I had no clue what I saw. Like I think a lot of other people were just like, oh, and stuff is like happening with the server. Kind of cool, I guess. Um, and like I did, like it was interesting, and I did try and steal the. I was inspired by it. Like I tried and steal the streaming. Like that's where I learned that you can actually like do streaming responses at all.
Uh-huh.
For the first time, I even tried stealing that form, the similar kind of format, like rows with IDs for a stupid POC of something, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, that's kind of cool. But I did definitely didn't quite understand what was going on there, apart from some stuff is happening on the server, I guess.
Yeah, and I
You
was
know what I mean?
watching it because I was like, okay, so like, did we did we miss something like 3 years ago, or maybe two? I forget, but like a few years ago, and I think the only kind of like thing that they were talking about at the time was like hydration. Here, look, like those components are not hydrated, and I guess if you're like interested in something like quick or something, like you probably care about hydration, but like most people don't even know what that is, or like why it's important, or like why do you have
Yeah,
it, or like is it good when you don't have it. So it's it's an interesting video, and yeah, like a lot of stuff kind of like changed since then, and there were a lot of hand waving of like, hey, we're going to have like something that will fix this, going to have like something that will like do this. So it's
yeah.
it's a interesting it's an interesting video kind of like to revisit. But yeah, speaking of like day 0 days since new JavaScript framework, I heard that you're building your own JavaScript framework.
Ah. Oh, okay, you got me there. Although to be perfectly honest, that's, um, it's not as much something that I intend for people to use. It's more like well, okay, the server components need a framework. Why? And like, so I kind of wanted to find out why. So I went and started a thing, started looking at other things people were doing to try and like really understand why you need that kind of setup for it, because it seems like, and of course this point has been like talked over to death, but it's like React used to be just this thing you pull into. Why do you suddenly need a framework to use a feature or something? So I like, you know, I wanted to understand why. So I made this little thing. Or to be more honest about it, I went and read next.js code like a lot to try and understand what they're doing. And I went and read I think Waku. The from Daishi, right?
Yeah,
I
Daishikato.
think yeah. So that was one of the first. I think the first non-next, thingy that
Yeah,
got
yeah.
any kind of traction. And I was reading that, and then I was reading, the fixture in the React repository, and just trying to furiously piece together what the hell is going on here. Um, until I kind of got to understanding what's going on. I think I just remembered one more thing. Like originally about that video we were talking about earlier. I don't want to do a
hmm
whole callback, but like I think at that point that server components are like Livewire or Blazor or one of those,
hmm
where it's like or whatever is. I think from Elixir. I think that was Livewire, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
Phoenix.
Yeah,
You
that
know what
was
I'm talking
kind of
about.
like the that was the beginning of like the modern ones. So like I think C sharp always had even before C sharp. I forgot how they called it, like
Yeah,
ASP.NET or something like that. But it's like there was a thing of web forms or something like that. But it's like the idea is that you write everything in C sharp and it will generate some kind of
yeah,
JavaScript to make it interactive. But I think like so live Phoenix Live View was like the
live
kind of
view.
like a new start for this whole thing, and that's where Livewire from Laravel and like some other ones showed up and like and
Yeah,
redefined this
yeah,
because it's more how do I say it? Yeah, it's just like a more modern architecture, like using WebSockets and all that stuff. It's something that is like you can't do like livewire on like serverless JavaScript, right? So that you need to have some kind of like state and stuff.
yeah, exactly. And so, but that's the thing. Like at some point, I still kind of thought like, wait, so is this doing Livewire? What is this doing? And then so I had to. that's the thing. Like, I guess another thing about me, like I have to when something like this is bothering me, I either like give up and never touch it again, or like I go and find out to what the hell is going on, or like so how does this actually work? What does this do? And this is why Tangle exists, which is it's funny because I've never had the opportunity to say the name out loud. Because I never talked about it to anyone outside of Twitter. But yeah, this is the thing. This was my attempt at mostly cloning Next, to be perfectly honest.
Uh-huh.
But it is like we've also um, this is this kind of thing that Next got, right? Because like they're working very closely with the core team, so they were kind of they kind of had a head start on everybody, and they already had everything set up in the correct way, and there wasn't really any other reference to go by. And there's still not a lot. So cloning Next was where it's at.
Yeah,
um,
I want to react to few people in the chat. So Dave is here and JC is here. I was actually like trying to talk Jesse into doing a stream with me, but he's like, no, I just need to finish like this thing and then I will do it. So he's also doing his own kind of like it's not like a framework. It's better guess. No. I'm still trying to get you, so like, you're not off the hook. So, uh, so he's basically like doing the exercises from like a Dan's article, a recent article about React components.
mm,
He's like, how can we
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah. I've
React
seen.
components from scratch?
I've seen the
Yeah,
video. I've seen the video.
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't
And
I haven't seen it. I've seen it on my timeline. I haven't watched it
yeah,
yet. Sorry.
and he did like a 1 hour, like 2 hour video about like all of the. I mean, he did two videos. So like the first part is just like what the article was about, and the second was kind of like exercises. So the first part about the article, I actually like took his code and like put it in Astro. So it's like, oh, like Astro already compiles JSX, so like I can skip that step. So it's like it was like Astro already has a router, so like I can skip that step. So it was like a funny exercise. So like all the people who are here written their own React components implementations,
This is
but just
good.
like
This is
on
good.
a different level. Oh yeah, except for
Mm,
you. I guess yeah, you're writing Vue right now, so yeah, that's a bit harder than React components. I mean
this is,
the
yeah, go
the
go.
main question that I have for you is that's like going back to the where was this like mirrors, like what do you think what do you think is like the difference between Next and reactor components, like when one starts and the other one ends, because it's a tricky kind of like a balance of if I'm creating an alternative, am I going to create just like something that corresponds to React's RFC, or I don't think they have like docs for it yet. I think it's just like in RFC right now. So
Yep.
like, what is the kind of like the spec? What is like the completion kind of like goal or whatnot? Like, do you get some libraries that are happening right now, right? So like, I think. Since Dave is here, like Clerk and Propel both have like their all auth libraries working in React Server Components environments. I think React Query just recently announced like, hey, we're going to support React Server Components, but when they say that, they only mean Next, right? There is no other React Server Components thing they can test and say we're supporting React Server Components. They're saying we're supporting Next. that's that's kind of
There
like
about React Query. So because you were in that stream too, I think, right? That TK Dodo did
I was in a
recently,
part of
maybe.
it. I didn't watch it yet fully.
Ah, right. So. I did specifically ask about that part about supporting only Next, kind of like because someone was asking about it, and I said, oh, they're using this one specific thing that's currently like they need to do this next specific thing to make this work because React doesn't expose a primitive for it yet. But he was like adamant that they absolutely do not want to be Next specific. They want to just be like a generic, use it with any server components implementation. They're just missing a primitive basically, and so they kind of have to rely on Next's thing right now. It's called sorry, it's called use server inserted HTML.
Uh-huh.
It's for adding extra tags into the stream, into the output, as it
Yeah, yeah.
streams down, right?
I think that's
And
where they send like hydration information, right? For the queries or query cache.
yeah, I think if I remember correctly, they like I don't remember what they send, but it's like either you drop a script into there or something. You just have to, dropping a script into there is a very common trick. Like every single um, RSC framework that I've seen does this thing of inserting scripts into the stream, which is kind of why that's considered like a missing primitive, because every like again Next does it, and then everyone else also has to do it. So it's like, okay, maybe React should give us a way to, you know, add extra stuff into the HTML in a nice way instead of doing these horrible hacks.
Yeah, so
I
I
gotta,
wonder if like we have React and then we have like React DOM, right? And or like React native and all that stuff. So
yeah.
I wonder if there should be some kind of like package that is just basically providing interface, if that makes sense. And then there are like just implementations of that interface.
But I think that's React mostly. Well, that's okay. Depends on what you mean, but I think that's kind of React and React React Server DOM Webpack and all of its variations.
Uh-huh.
And this is kind of when you start to get into your question where I took us on a tangent about React Query. Um, of like where does next start, like where does react end, where does next start in this situation, because implement specifying interfaces is a very good way of talking about it, I think, because that's kind of like the thing with RSC, right? Like there's the spec and there's like you have to implement a bunch of things that React then like relies on to do its thing, but you have to sort of provide like for example, React is not gonna you know implement your bundling for you, right? They do expose like a little plugin, like a toy plugin kind of out of one of the packages to help in the um, help in this kind of thing, but like they're never going to handle your bundling process for you. So for example, the kind of bundling transform you need to do to implement the split between server components and client components, right? That needs to happen sort of like someone else needs to do it. React can expose a couple of functions that you like hook in there, but they can't do it all, right? So it's very much is like they basically already kind of do this where they expose a bunch of functions out of, for example, React Server DOM Webpack, and you call them to register stuff, to connect stuff. Uh, Recently, one nice update came out to React Server DOM Webpack, and stop me if I'm getting too technical.
No, no,
But
I'm having fun.
like because there was a thing that you had to wait, which one exactly was there was a thing that you had to do when like in the process of you, client references, all
Uh-huh.
right, client references. I know, do you want to go over client references for the viewers, or do we explain it?
Jesse just mentioned that in the chat that he said, "I'm so happy they finally exposing the way to make references."
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point. So the thing is, like React, like when you do a TLDR, you've got a client component, right? Like with use client. And this is the part like the RFC or like the spec, shall we say, um, specifies what's supposed to happen with the use like from a server component. When you import a file that has use client in it, it has to be transformed in a certain way, right? And like
Hmm.
actual functions need to be kind of like the component implementations need to be like replaced with placeholders that have like IDs, right? um, this is kind of the part of client components don't run on the server because they literally don't exist there. They were replaced by placeholders like the references,
Hmm.
right? And previously, you kind of had to do some manual stuff there. Like there was like, okay, so you have this object and it's got a dollar type property or whatever, and it's got an ID, and you have to make it a proxy so that it looks like a function, blah 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 blah. And it's like I think everybody copy pasted the same code from Next because again, Next had it first. So and there's one way to do it, right? There's really one way to do that kind of thing correctly. And so what they did, because it's like it's you have an object that contains an ID and it has to pretend to be a function, like with via some proxy magic, right? So there's really not many ways to do it, and I think like I said, there's really one way to do it. And so that implementation was recently upstreamed into React Server DOM Webpack, I believe, or one of those
Uh-huh.
things. And so now, and now the part that the framework needs to do became a bit smaller because the thing like React does this thing, and now they just export a function that's like, okay, create me a client reference, and like I don't care what exactly that is. It's gonna pretend to be a function and have the ID embedded somewhere where React will read it later.
So, do you
Right.
think there are like a lot of things that are like that they can also kind of like rip out of Next and kind of like mainstream them into React?
I actually don't necessarily think so, because um, but apart from the stream stuff, like I think the primitives they came up with and like what they've already exposed, again from my experience implementing this kind of thing, I really didn't have to do a whole lot of copy pasting from Next, apart from the proxy thing,
Hmm.
and the stream thing, which I didn't steal from Next. I stole it from MFNG, which shout out, shout out to, shout out to, so, hope I'm getting the name right. Henrik Liebenau, I think. Um, Unstoppable, you know, Unstoppable on Twitter and GitHub. If you search for MFNG, he's also got one going, and he's not as vocal, I think, in all of these threads, but he was there. He had one of the first decently working ones. Um, if you just search GitHub for MFNG, or let me drop a link in the,
MFNG.
uh, yeah, should be, or I can find a link.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
Micro
um,
frontends, serverless
yeah.
RSC. That
So
sounds like
it doesn't do a
something
lot
from
of
Quick.
micro front end stuff. It doesn't do a lot of micro front end stuff, but it is
Uh-huh.
quite well, like it's much better than my code, like for the part that is does, and I referenced his implementations a bunch of times. He's also got like a couple plugins that you can just pull down from npm and use for the tricky bundling stuff.
Hmm.
Although as far as I know, he's been away from the game for a month because of
So
other stuff.
what do you use for bundling? Like what's
Webpack.
does Webpack?
Webpack.
Does it
uh,
have to be slow?
uh, I know some people are working on like Vite things. But wait, what's this? Yeah, this is MFNG, right?
Yeah, I'm looking through their website, like the one that
Mm.
is linked on the GitHub, and yeah, I was just kind of like, yeah, just looking at what requests does it send and all that stuff.
It does the regular RSC stuff you would mostly expect, probably. I think
Uh
the
huh.
router wasn't too fancy in there. Uh, but but the code is well written and like, it's like back in the like a couple of months ago, I think, where everything was still like, at the very beginning of this stuff, we were, in all of these Twitter threads being like, oh, I did it this way, well, I did it this way, blah, blah, blah. So, but just wanted to shout out because it's like the code there is very good. And the reason I brought it up is I borrowed my stream inserting implementation from his because mine was crap. um, yeah, and
Yeah, the joke
so
about Webpack is that like the was it like Ship Week where they said, hey, we solve front end. We basically have like solutions for everything, and we're creating React Server components as like a default in next.js going forward. Like TurboPack is going to fix everything that was bad about Webpack, and we are like few months later, and everyone's still using Webpack, and it's like it's still slow, and it's actually like slower. Like the dev server is like slower than it was before because it's doing like more work. Yeah, so I wonder what's your take on that? Like, is that how
on
do I say it?
basically on what you saying on the Webpack being currently the default or something. Is that what you mean, or like
I mean,
um
I think the like the real question that I want to ask is, do you think React Server components in Next are are going to succeed if they don't have TurboPack, right? So like that's their bet that they set out. They're like, this is going to be great. We're not completely like 100% there, but like this is the future that we're seeing. Like we're looking forward, and it's like it's not there yet. Like, is it going to basically like a break Next.js? Like, are people going to be like so upset with Webpack so that if other React Server components thing happens and it's like it's not built on Webpack, everyone will just like go there.
I think like this is speculation because I haven't looked into why the dev server was having issues. But I think the problem with that because like web Next has a ton of Webpack stuff. Because I know because I had to read through it to try and understand what they're doing with all the bundling stuff, right? Um, but they have really a ton of work happens in the bundler, and it kind of seems to me like it might be a case of not Webpack fundamentally being slow, just they're doing too much. They're not caching something. They're not, but you know what I mean? Like if you make a slow plugin, every bundler is gonna end up being slow,
Uh-huh.
kind of. I think so. I think the situation is more related to something like that. It might be still like Webpack um, messing with something they're trying to do, and it's like, oh, this should be fast, and we're doing a lot of this kind of operation, but because of something or other in Webpack, it ends up being slow. But I don't know. Like it's generally, I think with this kind of thing, it's more like you're holding it wrong. Because like you can sure Webpack isn't the fastest thing in the world. There's faster
Yeah.
things, but you cannot like it's been around a while and people have written decently fast setups with it.
Yeah.
It may be that they crossed some kind of threshold over which you just can't make it fast, but I don't I don't think so. It doesn't seem like that kind of thing. Like it just
Yeah.
seems like
I
you know
just
what I
wanted
mean.
to bring it back to like to the formal part. So the thing about a lot of people who just, I don't know, like like we have someone in chat. Does that avatar look familiar? Might seen that person on Twitter before. So, like some people, I'm pointing at me, just switch from Create React App to like Vite or Astro or something like that, and they are using React Query or gRPC or something like that, and they're like, "Wow, this is basically like the best developer experience, like just like in terms of like everything. It's fast, like everything kind of like type safe and all of that stuff. So it's like it solves all of my problems. I just switch to
Mm.
that, and even people who are like switching to remix, right, they're using um, they're using yes build. So like they have right now they have this like full stack HMR where if you change your loader, only like the fetch for the loader is going to refetch, like you will not like lose anything in the state and all that stuff. So it's like everything is fast, everything is like kind of like working perfectly, and you're sitting here like in your perfect land as you think about it is, and you're looking like over there where they have React Server components, and it's like, am I missing something? Like, I know that it's like
Yeah.
it's full of bugs because I forgot like in Next.js, if you create a sync client component, it just like blows up and like never and like the
There's a,
just
I think there's a warning for those now in
yeah,
React
they
itself.
just added it. But what I'm saying is that they're like, oh, like I see how everything is kind of like greener on our side. Like, why should I go into that React Server components? Like, it's not what you like oversold us like on the ship week, right? It's like it's not as fast because they were showing like those numbers where it's like turbo pack is like 10 times faster than Vite and all that stuff. So like, okay, so you're like you're until delivered on like on everything. Why should I like even care about that, right?
It's tough. It's tough. I know what you mean, but also I think, they had a, and with server components in general and app directory in general, it's kind of a chicken and egg problem where like if they kept it all as experimental, no one would have used it, so they wouldn't
Hmm.
have found all those bugs. So it's like at some point you gotta, I think you reach the, I don't know. I haven't maintained a project that large, so I don't really know what it's like. But it kind of feels like you gotta, at some point you gotta be, you'll be like, fuck it, we'll do it live, and and then you see, because with a thing that's this, because it is very complex, like it's hellously complex, and like the ways all of those pieces can interact with each other, client cast here, server cast there, Vercel's magic, other cast over here, and then there's like three different things that can invalidate stuff, and how all those pieces fit together is like, unless you go and write a formal, like those formal verification languages, right? Like
Uh-huh.
unless you went and like wrote a formal model, I don't think which would have taken like ages, because it's a hard thing to even specify. Unless you do that, I think it's very hard to like catch all this stuff, beforehand, and also not basically drag out the alpha whatever phase, and so that, which means you don't get people testing it. Did they maybe do a bit of a misstep with marking things as stable?
Uh-huh.
Maybe it should have been beta instead of experimental or something. Like, because I get where people are coming from. Like if you're using a thing that's supposed to be stable, and then it's like all these sharp edges and that kind of thing. I get that, but
Right.
I don't
Yeah, I
I
just
don't know.
wanted to say that like uh so Nihil is doing his thing for Vite, right?
Yeah,
He's using
yeah,
Vite.
yeah, yeah.
So Waco is using like SWC. Uh, and I think they were talking about using Vite. I don't remember like the Vite story. I think in Vaku it's kind of like a mix. They use like two bundlers or something like that. and
So yeah.
I
Mhm.
wonder if that's going to be like a uh, if like the bundler is going to be, I don't know, the thing that like breaks or makes React Server components implementations for different frameworks.
So that's an interesting point, which kind of brings us back to like where does next end, where does RSC begin, and like why does React Server DOM Webpack have Webpack in the name? Maybe that's like a an interesting thing to worry about, and it's really about the module system, right? It's really about because what do bundlers do? Bundlers take your code and like glue a bunch of modules into one file and sort of emulate a module system like like you would have with normal ES modules or something, right? I'm sure you've looked at compiled Webpack code a bunch of times and like they wrap every module with a function and that kind of thing, right? You know what I mean?
Uh huh.
Um, and so really the only reason server components kind of need to care about the bundler that's been used, and like the only reason React Server DOM Webpack has Webpack in the name because it's because they just call some Webpack specific methods like Webpack require some ID and then Webpack preload whatever, right? So it's really quite a small like intersection or like I don't know how the small API surface area. But then
Hmm.
if you want to do weird stuff with loading code like RSC does, how exactly you do it kind of depends on the specific bundler that the module that provides the module system you're working with. The fun thing is um, I believe I don't quite know how they do it now, but if you look at some in Waku's code, can you can you search the repository for underscore webpack? Because I think if you're gonna find the one place.
Do they
I
have
think
to
you just
emulate Webpack?
exactly, exactly. Uh, uh, global this dot webpack require, is that it? Because I can't see the
Yeah,
stream
yeah,
very
yeah.
well
I'm
on
trying to
my.
make it bigger a bit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so this is inducted somewhere, and these are the parts they do it here because these are the parts that React Server DOM Webpack expects to exist and uses to load code. It doesn't even have to come from Webpack, obviously, because this
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah, yeah.
come from like they're not using Webpack here. Um,
It just
but yeah,
had to
you
be
just have
some kind of like a fixed name, right? So that two systems can kind of like talk to each
yeah.
other.
Yeah, and so you basically the people have done this in it, but I had something like that in one version of my thing on the server side before I bundled the server with Webpack as well. In Tangle in my thing, I had something very similar, to make React Server down Webpack work. And so I think we might see some sort of change there, or like, I don't know, maybe they change the interface a bit so that maybe you don't need to make 10 billion different packages for separate bundlers
Hmm.
or something. Although I think that may be a bit more subtle. I remember looking at the PR for the Vite variant of this, which I can't remember who was. I think
Yeah,
Nikhil was
I
working on
have it.
that.
I have it over here.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you look at the discussion in there a bit, I think you had Seb saying because the magic method exposed is one thing, but then like for example, how you handle stuff with hot reloading, how you handle stuff like when is stuff supposed to get prefetched or preloaded, right? Some of the comments I remember being about this, and it's kind of like well, that depends on the bundler. That depends on how they set up all the code. Like, do we need to preload this? Should we preload this here or there? So I don't know. Maybe it's possible to abstract over this more, or maybe like just provide a generic one that you can hook any bundler into. But it's probably gonna be, you know, be at its best, like, you know, be more the most optimal when it's basically specialized by module system, which usually means by bundler.
Right. This is going to be a bit of a left field, but have you played with like Dino and Fresh and all of those kind of like zero bundle or whatever they call it?
I have not, though I have been like keeping tabs on what they do.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just funny that they have like a kind of like full blown starter template. By the
mhm,
way, I have also one based on Astro instead of Dino. But like this is like a big selling point for them. All tools that are built with Dino, they all are going to have like, hey, we don't require a build step because they have put kind of like enough stuff in the runtime itself so that like TypeScript or JSX and stuff like that is handled by the runtime. So you can just like
mhm,
import TSX file, and you will get like the expected kind of like output from it without specific like bundle step. And it's funny that I think Bon already, I mean Jared already said that they're looking into like building RC into Bon. So
or at least some of the bundling stuff. I remember. Yeah, he DM'd me at some point, and I was supposed to try running my thing in Bun, and I never did. I'm sorry, Jared. And I'm gonna get back to it at some point, because I think, because it might actually be a decent thing because it's smaller than Next. You know, it's much less code to port over, um, but it's also an incredibly toy thing. So
Yeah, I think
anyway,
they said they just released the version that supports Read, and they said that the next kind of like milestone is going to be next support, and it used to work. Like the first like the first time I tried Bond, I was trying to run next on it, and I think it almost worked, but like my version of next was like mismatch or something like that. So it's like that's like my one of my like oldest videos on this channel is me trying Bond before it was a thing, and that
mhm.
video only did like any views when like Bond was released. So like no one cared about Bond when I was looking at it. So but yeah, the point is that like this for tools like Bond, for tools like Dino, they care about I mean speed and just like the less configuration. And I think Jesse played with like node loaders. So in Node 20,
Yeah.
you can basically kind of like hook into when you import a module, and you can say, hey, like I will convert this module before you can import it. So you can do all of those kind of like bundling looking things at just like at that import time, or I don't know how to say it properly, but
At load time, at import time, at some.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know what you mean. I know.
Yeah, so
Uh,
do you see that kind of like happening? Do you see that being like a real thing? Of JSX basically became kind of like a standard, right? So like there are like tons of tools that are doing like JSX transforms, and is
yeah.
RC going to be a standard? Is that kind of like going to be like a easily accessible thing?
I think I think it might. I think currently it's very optimized towards React, and like there's a bunch of, like, even the import condition, the one you put in package JSON is like React server, not server or something. But even like the the original RFC does kind of hint at like, yeah, we could, you know, some of a lot of this stuff isn't really all that React specific, and it could like, you know, could be maybe adopted as a more generalized thing because the essence of it really is the client reference stuff, right?
Hmm.
Um, by which I mean you have one part of your code and then you have the other part of your code. And when you author it, it looks like one's importing the other, but at runtime, it's actually getting like a proxy, a sim, not the real thing
Right.
that it can like refer to, much like, you know, I don't know, a macro can refer uh, to functions because macros is obviously my favorite RSC analogy, right? So you can like refer to symbols but not call them yet because it
Yeah,
doesn't exist in this phase. And then, you know, then you do stuff with it. And that's really like the most fundamental thing. This is the part that's very generalizable, I
yeah.
think. And
I
because, you know, because I think,
uh
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. It's just funny how like a React Store components, like everyone is like, oh, it's like Angular 2 moment. But what I'm thinking is like uh, React did a lot of those kind of like mental shifts or well, whatever you're going to call them. But because I started using React in 2014, and TypeScript didn't support JSX yet. So, and we were like hard set on TypeScript, and we were just like, okay, so we could use React, we're just not going to use JSX, right? So, like,
Ooh.
I like to tell talking about it because it's a, like a, not everyone had to live through that. But anyway, so the idea is that before uh, before TypeScript, before React, you would just create a file, name it .js, and add a script tag to load it. That was the build step. That was the only thing that you need to do. And this this idea of using even like modules or just like I don't know, like splitting bundles and all that stuff. For web, it was really new, and like not everyone is even on board right now, right? So like, if you go to HTMX, like they're saying, hey, just add a script tag from our CDN. They're not they're not talking about like how to bundle stuff, right? So it's like it's
Mhm.
we feel like it like it did. And how to say it, like we feel like this shift has happened 10 years ago, and it's done. But if you look kind of like world around you, it's like it's not really done. But for a lot of people, it did kind of like change everything, right? It's like your application became like a, instead of like a scripting thing, right? You just like sprinkle on top. It's like a real application where you run real compilers, real, I don't know, like real kind of like steps. And in this sense, like JSX or like CSS, how do you call it? Like a CSS and JS and all that stuff, like all of those build steps, all of those kind of like um, I don't want to say tools, but just maybe like processes or just like ways of authoring stuff. Like the same way with like how a lot of people say, "Oh, if it wasn't for Angular, TypeScript wouldn't like become that popular." And it's like maybe, which I don't really believe, but a lot of people say that. So it's like maybe if it wasn't for React, maybe we wouldn't have like kind of like compilers and all that stuff being kind of like in the norm, right? Maybe this kind of like Dino style stuff where you have zero build steps where you just um, for example in Dino they use a lot of like CDNs where you go to like
For the package stuff. Yeah, yeah,
ESM
yeah. I know, I
sh
know.
slash React, and it's like
ESM dot run too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this service, it will like bundle or compile or whatever, like it will transform your thing in some way. So it's like if I'm going to import a like types tsx file, right, it will convert it in some way. So like maybe that would have been the way that we will like author everything, right? You just use this kind of like TypeScript aware CDNs or whatnot. So it's like it's not it wasn't clear 10 years ago that this is going to be the thing, right? And maybe right now we're living through kind of like that step as well, where it's like you didn't used to think about HTML being inside of your JavaScript files, and you didn't used to think about server like or database code, right, being inside of your JavaScript files.
Yeah. Mm, So there's a couple of things. One thing, about compilers, right? Because I think I'm not sure if it started with React. I think it didn't it start with like Babel and whatnot, just like polyfills and all of that kind of thing. Like, oh, I want to write code in the new way,
I would
but
say
it's not the
they're
same
like
thing as the browser can't run, right? I
yeah,
just
yeah.
think it was started earlier, right?
It started with CoffeeScript, I would say.
Probably the biggest thing in that. Yeah, like to be perfectly honest, I wasn't there for that. I wasn't doing front end at that time, so I mostly know this from like historical, historical reference,
Right.
not direct experience. Um, but it started there, I think, and like and Babel was then the like the big thing that everyone
Yeah,
used at
six
time.
to 6 to 5.
Yeah, yeah, and then they renamed, of course. Um, and like I don't know, but I think I don't mind the build stuff. I think that's my hot take. I do not mind the build stuff. I've worked with in a lot of compiled languages, and well, as long as there's a way to work with it interactively, that's like fast enough. I don't mind having to run my code through a tool. Like, yeah, it is nice to just like if you have a REPL, right? Like, or some kind of console that you can just type stuff into. That is very nice. That is one of the like main things I want in a language is a way to mess with it interactively somehow with a short feedback loop. But you can kind of do that both in like languages that do require some sort of build step and don't. And I think I wonder how like it's interesting the recent move to everyone the basically the like you said like the pendulum is kind of swinging back from everybody running huge build steps back to maybe we can just like do this at at import time, or maybe we can do like which one is it, tsx I think, or something, or the es build loader or whatever, right? That just like transpiles stuff as you import it at runtime, because like the code got fast enough, like we got fast enough ways to deal with this kind of thing that is feasible. So it's interesting how far we can get with that. But the one thing I would say to that is I think like when you have something like next.js, they do like especially with the old format, the pre-RSC format, right, where you had like get server side props and then you had your component and they were magically code split into two different things. um, I think it's like doing stuff like that, like basically meta programming. Like there's some things you can do with it at import time, but there's some things that you kind of have to have an overview of the whole compilation to be able to do. Loadable component is one of those, right? I don't know if you remember that one. It's the thing that backs like next dynamic, and like before you could await in or sorry, before React had streaming, before React 18, and you wanted to do SSR of a lazy component, that didn't
Hmm.
quite work, right? Because you couldn't do asynchronous stuff in there, so we
Right.
had to use like loadable component, which basically worked by at build time. finding all of those lazy references and like preloading them, like pre-importing them before the code runs, so
Uh-huh.
that when you get to it, you can render it synchronously and React isn't going to yell at you, right?
Right.
Because it's because React lazy didn't used to work. And that kind of thing, I don't know how feasible that is to do, um, like um, per file, basically, live, right? So,
I think
or
the
like,
answer could be in a so what you like said is like, oh, we needed to do more stuff before we can call React. That basically was like the only way to do React on the server, and that's I think what is maybe like changing, right? So like React is pushing more of that stuff kind of like inside of React now. So it's like
yeah.
more of that stuff that you had to do before you even start doing React, you can do like now inside of React, and basically maybe like the solution is to make React more um, more capable, right? Or like more async. Uh, yeah.
So see, that's one example, but then you have stuff like Tailwind, for example. It's the same problem, right? Tailwind, when it generally like when you want to do something like Tailwind, and you want to tree shake, quote unquote, the classes, right? You want to generate only the ones you need, not to have like a 3 megabyte CSS style sheet. Tailwind also basically needs to do a full static analysis, like Jesse said um, in the comments, right? But this like, how do you do Tailwind at if you're doing stuff per file at runtime? Um, Maybe you don't. Maybe you just pick a different shape of solution, right? Maybe you do some sort of middle ground that kind of can generate that per file, and then you're smart because maybe that's fast enough. But I think the it's more like the build step versus no build step. Goes beyond just React because you have many tools that kind of rely on knowing everything. I think polyfills as well. I th- which one was it? I can't remember the package name right now, but the most used one for polyfills. I think they had a Babel plugin that basically looked at all the usages of stuff within your code and then only added the polyfills for, for the stuff that you used, for example.
Uh-huh.
Built-ins usage or whatever in Babel config. If anybody still remembers Babel config. Uh, and that kind of thing is also very hard to do. Like
Yeah, it's funny
I don't
that
have a
you
good term for this, but
yeah,
you know
it's
what I
funny that
mean.
you mentioned Tailwind, because like Dino, they have what they call Tailwind, and it's like it's funny that they call it that, but it's not Tailwind. They're using Twind dev. Uh, okay, I
The
put it. Yeah, so
twin.
they're using this one, which is like CSS and JS
Mm,
kind of like solution. So
yeah,
it will basically generate that CSS file for rules that you use, checking like what are the rules that you actually used. There is no kind of like build step, right, to generate
yeah,
Tailwind.css. So it's yeah,
yeah.
it's
Of
funny
course,
like
it's
marketing
possible to
wise.
do.
It's funny marketing
Uh,
wise that they call it Tailwind because you're going to use Tailwind, but you need a build step for that.
So, of course, and this is what I meant. Basically, if you want to do something like Tailwind, you end up with a different shape of solution, and then you just showed me what you end up with, basically, because you have to do it in kind of a dynamic CSS and JSC kind of way, right? Because you
Uh-huh.
don't have a build step where you can analyze stuff statically,
I
and
mean, going back to that like ESMSH example, right? You kind of have to do that basically, like instead of SSG, it has to be SSR. Imagine that you have tail like I don't know how they do it in Next, but like kind of like API route that is called tailwind.css. And like once the client is asking for it, just go read through your source code, generate the CSS file, save it in some kind of cache, and you got kind of like you got around having a build step at like before you package your application to having a build step during like the round of your application. And I think I don't remember the last name. This guy Thomas. I only know him from Twitter. So he was playing with like with Dino and like all of those kind of like dynamic modules where it's just like you just import stuff, and during the import you like generate the thing that you want. Okay, so uh,
But this one the one thing about that, I think the idea for like what you said about SSD versus SSR, I think that's going to be a very interesting area because that is where a lot of
yeah.
people are doing stuff in that area
Yeah, it's
right
interesting that
now.
like Remix just
So
said, "Hey, we don't care about SSG," right? And they were pretty
yeah.
successful for like a few years.
Yeah, although source code analysis is not really a thing most people tend to think of, like me, because again, I like compilers, I just like compilers. So source analysis of something and generating stuff from it at runtime is not really where my mind goes to. Like yeah, I like my Webpack plugins, but that is an area I know that a lot of people are looking into, basically like for DX and for just not having that build step because maybe our tools are fast enough that you don't need it, and then that opens up new possibilities, right? So I think it's a very interesting thing, and I think we're gonna see cool stuff in this area, kind of. And I'm gonna be sad because I like compilers, and that's not quite compilers. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna be sad. I'm joking.
yeah. So I just want to go a bit more into kind of like into some code and uh, to basically put some of the things into more concrete terms of like
Mhm.
here, like look, this thing, this is how kind of like this thing works. And um go going all the way back of like of the like the thing about like looking from the side is like, yeah, I'm sitting here looking from my like Astro or like solid islands or and whatnot, and I'm looking into RSC, and it's like, am I missing something? And it's just funny that Dino 135 or whatever they just did just oh no, it's not Dino, it's Fresh. Um, and they just like released their new version, and their new version has this thing, which
Yeah, let me
which
hold on. Let me tab over to another browser where I can see the stream properly, because otherwise I can't see what you're talking about. Oh, what is pause? Hold on. There
yeah,
we go.
in the other
There we
tab
go.
it's probably like with a huge delay. So
Mhm.
in other tab it's probably going to be like delayed quite a bit.
We'll see. Maybe I'll manage. Yeah, it's like 10 seconds. You
Okay.
gotta you gotta move slow.
Okay, I'm going to. So this is kind of like the only page that I want to show about. And it's like, so previous Fresh versions, we have interface, we have a handler, which is kind of like a remix loader, but it could be or like SvelteKit, which is like the same, right? Uh, Handler is their loader and actions all at the same time,
Mhm.
and it's written more as a yeah as like API handler. So it's I don't know, it's funny looking. For me, it's funny looking. Like I haven't worked with Thrash enough to internalize all of this stuff, so that's why it's funny looking. But we can imagine Remix, right? So we have a loader that will get some data, some like async data from database, and it will pass it as like as a prop to the page, right? And So it's like a mix of get server side props, I guess, and remix. But anyway,
Yeah.
the point kind of like stands. We had the separate thing so that like framework knows that if you do if you want to get for the data from the server, you call this handler and you get it out of the bundle so that like client doesn't see server code and all that kind of like stuff. And the new change that they did in 1.3 is that, hey, why are we doing all this stuff? Let's make it a sync component, right? So it's like some of the React Server components patterns are already showing up here, and it's funny because like this component, instead of getting props, it now gets request and context, right? So it's like it's basically how do I say it? Like page component, page
Yeah.
React. It's not React; they use Preact, but this page level server component.
Hmm.
I feel like there should be like a few more buzzwords in that title, but it seems too short.
Well, that's how you know it's a good idea. Listen, I can make everything about RSC. No, but it is cool. I've seen this. I haven't looked into how exactly this works. I remember their islands can be nested also, which was something RSC. Well, it was kind of like, yeah, you can do this in RSC, you can't do it in a bunch of other ones. And I think Fast
Yeah.
could do nested islands, is that right?
Yeah, so
Um,
it depends on like what you call by that name. What it usually means is that like how when you're inside of React Server component, you can pass other React Server components as like
yeah,
children to
the
client components.
donuts. The
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was always like a islands thing. It was there as far as I understand, but so this is like the biggest kind of like feature that islands people can like understand, that is different from like that is different from um yeah, so this is probably the part where I would show some code and okay, I'm not sure what. Oh yeah,
It's about, yeah.
I'm working on this unsafe HTMX demo, and yeah, you never saw that. Uh,
So,
it just like someone on Twitter said like
awesome.
HTMX is unsafe, and it was like a thing for a moment. So I wanted to jump on the fun. Uh, yeah, it's unfortunate that like the screen sharing is not working like completely good. So because I was I was going to show you some stuff. Uh, okay, so let's start. Oh no, it's wrong on this one. Okay, and it's not starting. What's happening? Okay, I should have prepared a bit more. I'm sorry. Um,
It's, you know, it's always like that with live demos, isn't it?
yeah, so I just want to show you a bit of like I'm basically I basically want to do meetup talk for uh, and I wanted to talk about React Server components, and I was writing it for so long, so like I changed what I'm going to talk about like 3 times. So initially it was about like how React Server components are basically island architecture, and so let's create just like a file. Uh, Hello. So okay,
This
so
is Astro.
yeah, so we're going to create just a file, right? So it's like hello. It's HTML, so we can say h1 hello, right?
Yep.
And it's going to be did it become bigger? I didn't notice because I
Do you
already
have
have
like a
like a
reset or something?
oh yeah.
There
Yeah,
we go.
there is an issue with like how HMR works when you have files like that, but I think it should work now. Yeah, so we're starting with HTML, right? So it's like, oh good, HTML kind of like everything is fine. So now we can do front matter. So this is that kind of like page level server components. So you can
Hmm.
say const date, new date, get time, and you can say date, right? So now it's going to be some time, and it's going to like kind of like SSR, right? It's going to uh, show this value for this request. If you go to source code, this is dev, so it will have like dev client that's doing HMR, but for the most part, yeah, yeah, for the most part, it's H1 and the number. That's the
Yeah.
all the HTML that we send. In production, it will have like a doc type and this. I mean this. Okay, so now, like speaking of kind of like speaking of like RSC's feature. So first feature is like streaming. So say I have some data that takes like a second to resolve, right? So it's going to be like a new promise. Yeah, let's just hope that
Copilot's got your back there.
yeah.
Um,
I was hoping on that, right? So but it's going to be like a new date, so we want it to be like a later date. So if I do async the data here, is it date? Okay,
so
I'm
you're
confused.
missing an await there on line 3, I think, right?
Yeah, so that's a thing that we're
Oh,
going
you
to.
gotta resolve. You gotta resolve. You
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
resolve. Yeah.
Okay,
Mm,
I'm so confused. I need date dot. No, that's the right one, and I just need to
yeah,
say
that's
that it's a number here. Is that going to work?
it's still not. I think we're still not awaiting the
Oh
thing.
right, yeah, yeah, the promise thing. So so first thing is that we can do is no, it should be like that. Yeah. So first thing that
Oh, does it get awaited automatically?
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, I didn't know
It's
that. Oh,
actually
okay, okay.
you can even do like stuff like that. You can like fetch some URL and it will like parse it and all that stuff. So they have like some kind of like I guess it's like for CMS integration, something like that. They oh, okay, I'm missing some chat. Is a sync route server components? Okay, people are helping me to insert more buzzwords, so yeah, I appreciate it. Uh, uh, so you saw that it will wait for that second and that resolve, but it's like, what if I don't want to wait? What if I want to stream? I think uh, so. It returns a promise. So I think they use like async iterate or something like that. I had this example somewhere, but I already forgot. Uh, the idea is that um, you can turn your components into streams if
Uh-huh.
those components require some time to be resolved. I think we can just try to create like a new file. So if I just create a new file that is like I don't know async.astro, and it's going to be okay. Let me figure out. So it should be like this part. So without the sync part. So just the sync part. So now if I import um, uh, import that file uh, and use it as a component, I think it like automatically will do the weight stuff. I don't
All
remember.
right, let's see.
Oh, okay. It doesn't work in view source, but it works in the real one. Yeah, I guess
Yeah, nice.
that's the answer. So the idea is that if I have some text here, you see that it like this text was kind of like blocked by this async component.
Mhm.
So it will like wait for promise and then
Oh,
deliver
that's
the
interesting, actually.
yeah, yeah.
So why does it, is there
So
like an equivalent of suspense to cordon off the thing that's async in here or not?
so if I do curl, I think you can see it like happening kind of like in real time. So it will like I guess if I
Hmm.
have like two components or something like that, it has to be like different components, I think, because those promises are resolving at the same time. I need to
Yeah.
I need to save it as like async two and do stuff two async two and stuff two here. Okay, so now, huh. All right, yeah, because they are how do we call it? Because they are siblings, it will actually do all of them at the same time. So it has to be like one have to import the other and all that stuff. So if I move this stuff to instead of inside of stuff one, yeah. I actually have all of this like demo somewhere. I just I just
Uh,
forgot where it is, but no, it still it still did it.
because what you want to do is what you want to do, like a one comes in and then the other comes in or
Yeah, yeah,
something.
you can make them so it like blocks on each other. For now, I don't remember how to do that, but
It's too smart.
yeah, it's too smart. Exactly, they're trying to do the right thing, even though I'm trying to do the wrong thing. It's unbelievable. Some
Well, I mean,
people,
they do have the basically the equivalent of a loader or whatever at the top. So why wouldn't they run them all in parallel if they can? Uh, well, I guess depends.
yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that works, but let's say before and let's say after.
I think maybe we'd have to have like a prop and chain one behind the other.
Yeah,
Right now, you can.
I just made the second one like promise for 2 seconds, so it's like it's still doing it. It still starts them in parallel, but they just like respond
Yeah.
differently. But what you can see in curl, like how just like data over the wire goes, right? It just like it waits for this next chunk of data, and you can do all kinds of stuff. So Vercel did their AI Edge, whatever it was called. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to
The
find it
prompt
now.
one, right? That's
So
streamed in the prompt responses.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that streams kind of like the weather local or something like that. So like I redid it in Astro as well. So it's like I get the GPT responses and I send them. So the thing that should kind of like shake you to your core is that there are no JSON flying over inside of script tags.
That is true. Because you can just do HTML streaming. Although I'd be interested if it can do nested thingies, like can it? Because because one of the features of like React's take on this is that you can kind of like have a layout with a spinner inside it, and then the content of the spinner comes in later. Um, and that's pretty hard to I don't know if that's even possible to do with a raw HTML stream, because you can do like build the document bit by bit, but if you want to like show a complete shell and then stream down the center, I think at that point you need to do like an inline script at least or something. Um,
Right. So the way to think about it is that this technique of just using basically like you have TCP connection, right? And you can send
yeah,
anything. I
yep,
wrote CGI bin scripts back in the day, and it's like if you do a while loop and you sleep for a second and you echo like thing, you can write a streaming thing in Bash. It's it's not that complicated,
yeah.
but um, you're correct that if you're sending inside of kind of like one pipe, you can't send like two things at the same time. That's the whole kind of like HTTP one or whatever thing they were trying to solve. If this works when your data, I mean, this works the best if we're talking about that example about like GPT prompts. It works the best if you are waiting on one thing and everything else is kind of in place. And what you do is you just like move stuff around with CSS
Mm.
because
Hmm.
it's actually I forgot like all the how the API call are done, but I was trying to do this like streaming demo um, for that GPT thing, and I wanted to copy like all the styles from Next.js, so it looks the same, even though it streams differently. And yeah, so I was thinking, yeah, I just have to make sure that like this block, even though it's the last block in the DOM, right? Not in the DOM, but
Right.
I guess in the
So
DOM,
you
right?
cheat with CSS.
Yeah,
I
you just
get it.
like
I
move it
get it.
around
Okay.
with CSS.
So you make it so that the stuff that goes at the bottom
Yeah, you
actually
stream it
streams
earlier.
down
Yeah, yeah,
first, and
yes.
then only the part that's streaming, like it basically needs to be at the end of the document for you to be able to use like pure, like raw, HTTP chunking or whatever
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
called. Yeah, 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 I got it. I got it. I got it. I'm sure you can make it work. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, we used to make it work in like PHP and stuff. That used to be
yeah.
like a thing people would do, especially if you have like um, I don't know, you have 500 like posts that you want to show. You just do I don't know, you just do like 50 SQL requests for 10 posts, and you just like you get the first 10 posts, you flush it. You get the second 10 posts, you flush it. So that this way
Yeah.
you're kind of like you're moving you're spreading your kind of like SQL load and all that stuff over the time. And Jesse just sent me the async iterator thing. Uh,
Jesse, the MVP.
yeah, yeah. So how much does it? Is it is it just going to do it infinitely,
I think
Jesse?
there's while true. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable, unbelievable.
uh,
This is I'm glad that he didn't send like a RAM minus RF, right? He could have. Okay, so we do like 10 of those, and I guess we will. I guess we'll just like break line raw a raw HTML without JSX.
ooh,
Like who would do
spicy.
that?
Can you do that? Can you do that? Is that kosher and Astro?
I mean, like, we're going to see. Maybe not.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm not sure if it worked. Yeah. Where's our curl thing? Did
Mm.
they break it? What's happening? Huh.
I think
Oh,
they might be going through some HTML escape thing or whatever.
yeah. I don't know. I will try to do like a slash and just like use pre tag or something. I wonder why the curl thing kind of like stuck. It works okay. It works
Um,
okay
hmm.
here. but for some reason, yeah, the curl thing. Yeah,
Not
and the
sure.
slash n's are not
Sure.
showing up. Okay, Jesse, this is not working code. I'm joking because like I don't remember where mine is. So okay, so we are yielding numbers. So maybe it's just like the type conversion thing is not happening. So okay, anyway, it's not the styling is not important. I'm just
I think, are we even calling the thing that's you were editing there? Because we're rendering time generator, which is just a function. I don't know if where are we returning this one to? Like line 12. I don't think that goes anywhere actually.
yeah, that's true. Okay, poor Jesse. We're just like making fun of his code like it's a GPT who wrote it.
Jesse GPT.
Okay, so
Yeah,
this one,
because
yeah, so this one is yeah, I think you can just like do like this as well. You just it's like kind of like
maybe that's what we need to do or something, yeah. Or like add a bit of text in there so we can actually tell if that's the one, like in line 15 or something. Because I'm still not sure if like, make it return like blah colon time or something. Just so that we can
yeah, I
tell them
think
apart because there's a
yeah, I think this one has to be a sync generator as well. Otherwise, it's no. Okay, we broke the thing. It works even worse now. Okay, let's.
doesn't matter. We know the principle of the thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so this was the one that I wanted to show, right? So it's like we can stream some stuff over time as long as it's in order. So that's why it's called in
yeah,
order streaming.
yeah. And React's whole thing is about allowing it to be out of order, and they
Yeah,
and they need to do a JS an inline script to do that.
yeah, and
Although
exactly,
the
and yeah, you can also do that in Astro, right? So like as long as you're returning a script here, that script could go and like find a diff and like change it, right? So but you would have to like write your script yourself. The important thing that I wanted to talk about this is that the in order streaming thing is good because it doesn't require hydration.
yeah,
This website is going to work. So my thing about like that AI website is that I wanted to make it to show that it works and then say, hey, like I did it without JavaScript. It's just CSS.
so, I mean, fair, but also isn't that kind of just like a party trick? Like, you know, like it's a neat trick for sure that you can do it without JavaScript, but I don't know. I'm not on the zero JavaScript hype train. Um, I guess that's my other hot take.
Right. So there are
So
like two
while it is
things.
it is cool,
Uh huh.
you know.
Yeah, there are two
Um,
things. So one thing is zero JavaScript, the other is like zero hydration, right? And
yeah,
like Quick, for example, they don't have zero JavaScript, but they have zero hydration.
yeah. Uh,
And
and
uh huh,
so the thing I wanted to say was because React's version of this, right? Like React 18 streaming, which was basically like even available pre RSC.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could just do it. Uh, I think that technically still doesn't require hydration because what they do for inserting the HTML, you don't even need React on the page, I think. Nah, you might, but what they do is they send along little script tags that just insert the HTML in the correct place.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
doesn't necessarily need to be hydrated right then and there, I think. Uh, but I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I haven't used that all that much, like the streaming stuff without RSC. Um, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think or and even like the basic principle, right? Just adding a little script that's gonna, find the place to insert the div and insert it. You can do that without client-side JavaScript, with very little client-side JavaScript and no
Uh huh.
hydration. That's what I meant.
Yeah, so when we talk about hydration, I really like talking about uh, uh, how to say it. It's like Svelte for all the accounts of people who use Svelte is like the best framework, and there's nothing that going to
of
convince
course.
them otherwise. Uh, and also, Reach did a talk about transitional apps, so that means that like everything that he said, he already done and it already works. Um, one of the things is like, okay, I'm on a blog. Why am I hydrating a blog? Okay, how do I know if they're hydrating a blog? I just pick up some text, right? And I just search this text. And I find it here in HTML, which is like expectable place to find it in a blog. But then I find it here inside of JavaScript. It's like, why are we talking about JavaScript if we solved hydration? Apparently we didn't. Apparently Svelte to show a blog needs to hydrate it, right? Which is like all of them do. It's just like not all of them did
Well, hold on.
did talk
So
about
doesn't it
transitional
work
apps.
without that JSON? Like it's still gonna show. It just may not be have all the interactive stuff, right? So there's layers here of like stuff. Sorry, nitpicking. I know what you mean. Uh,
Yeah, they have the progressive enhancement story, right? So like if my device doesn't support JavaScript or something like that, like I will still see the blog, which is which is like actually not that bad because there are plenty of sites where you wouldn't see anything, right? uh, I mean, like SPAs. I was doing this SamGrab
yeah.
stuff. So SamGrab they do. I don't know how to find it anymore. But SamGrab, their docs are like SPA. So if you go to their,
Mm.
I don't know where to find the docs because like I always go through like direct link. But this thing, it doesn't work if you have JavaScript disabled, which is yeah. Sometimes that happens. So I'm not saying that Svelte is bad. I'm just saying that it's you're sending this HTML twice, right? So like if you have a page that has 1 megabyte of text, that means you're sending 2 megabytes of text. That's just like how it works.
Yeah, that is true. That's definitely not ideal. Although once again, I don't like for me, not working without JavaScript is not a deal breaker.
Right. So here we're talking about
That's my
like
hot take, right?
HTML,
Uh,
right? So like you're
yeah,
sending
yeah, yeah,
twice
yeah.
the HTML. It's like it's
Yeah,
not.
of course. This part, just wanted to just because you were talking about the SPA stuff. But yeah, that's definitely not ideal uh, to do that. Definitely agree. But well, it's tricky to not have to do it, right? It requires jumping through a lot of hoops. I know Fresh has a story for that. I think Solid does too, as in hydrate off of the HT, like, when you hydrate or you resume or you whatever, you work off of the HTML that came in and basically like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
translate it back into the thing.
Yeah, the
Um,
reason that why I'm bringing this up is that since we like at the beginning we were talking, oh, like this video from Dan when he says, "Hey, look, this is so cool. There's no hydration happening, right?" And it's like, okay, so let's go to Theo's website, which he's like the like Svelte is like the best of that, and here's like the best of this, right? So this is the best website. We just turned off JavaScript, so like the some of the streaming stuff is not working. I don't remember like on which page what is streaming, but like this the clerk stuff. I think it's streamed.
yep.
It's not like just client side. I think it's streamed as well. But we're
If you
going
look
to
at the end of the document,
yeah, yeah,
you
exactly. We're
can
going to figure
probably
out it soon enough.
you see so this is next. Depends probably. I'm not quite sure how this
Yeah, I
ends
think
up
there's like
happening
a
because this is just RSC stuff.
yeah.
Um,
I think like this like test button or something like that is like there's like some updates streaming on it. I don't remember Congratulations, you
Because
have
this
placed
goes
step
to
five.
because there's two things happening. Because there's the RSC chunks, the underscore next f is one thing,
Uh
and
huh.
then you have React's own thing, which is like dollar. Can you try looking for like dollar $HF? I think that's what it was called. Uh, like in the whole in the no like capital letters maybe. I don't know. Um, I can't remember what it's called. Or
Maybe
like
this
dollar
page doesn't
H
have streaming. Yeah, I was testing on
maybe.
that Vercel Edge AI thing. I just like I don't remember the URL for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I know it's what you mean, but I can't remember the URL either. I think I've only seen videos on Twitter. um, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what
yeah,
I was gonna do. I just forgot.
yeah. That's
Uh,
where usually JC helps us, right, JC?
oh gosh. Isn't this
uh,
next.js AI chatbot view demo chat.versal AI? I think.
Chat Vercel AI. Chat.
Yeah. Chat.versal.ai, I think. Yeah, it's the first one. I think it's the first one.
This one?
Yeah.
AI chatbot. No,
And then view demo.
I think it
Try
has to.
the try the view demo button though.
Yeah, it's a bit different one. It's that one is like a kind
Uh-huh.
of like a fully interactive. You need to do something, but the other one
Mm,
is just the like it just shows uh, um mm, your just like it uses your location. That's the edge part, right? So like it will do
okay,
something.
okay,
And
okay.
I don't remember how it was called. I think it was yes, streaming next AI. Yeah, it's not it's not it. I mean, we can probably find it like in Cheddar Cell AI. Yeah, so this is a different one. So I think it was whatever the Vercel Twitter. Yeah, let's go to Vercel Twitter and let's go to Guillermo's thing. I think he had like just like a
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, that was the thing to do.
It was maybe like a month ago. Yeah, and it's really cool because because it doesn't require like any input. It just like works. Okay, Guillermo.
Interestingly enough, the one we have here
Uh huh.
doesn't seem to stream back, doesn't use that trick where you return blah, how do you call it? Because there's the trick you can do in next where you basically return new elements from an action's result, right? Like you do a post to a server action and then it returns back like new HTML or
Uh
like
huh.
new RSC stuff, new elements, and then you put them in the DOM. This one doesn't seem to do that. It looks like it's returning the lines of the chatbot's output as plain text streamed, of course, right?
Uh
So
huh.
it's like, um, but this is what we were talking about, like for the vanilla HTTP streaming. So this, yeah, they're not streaming back RSC uh, for this thing.
Okay. How do you this Vercel AI? No, that's not it as well. Okay. Apparently, no one knows what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Maybe
I
they
was
just
so
closed it.
impressed by that demo, and like no one even saw that.
I think I don't know. Now maybe I just maybe we're talking about two different. Maybe I'm thinking about this one. I don't know.
Okay, I didn't put enough e's into Lirop. Regional edge functions. Okay, okay, I'm giving up. I guess I will not. It's interesting. Like depending on where I was creating those demos, maybe I just have like a branch, and that branch has
Mm.
Maybe that branch has the backlink. Streaming demo. Okay, so this one, and
What Git client is this, by the way? Like,
it's called TIG, which is like
uh,
basically impossible SEO
nice.
wise. Another one is like lazy git. A lot of people use this one because it's just like more. It's basically like VS Code of like Git clients. It's like there's a kind of like helpers and all that stuff. You can click around and
Mm.
figure out what is happening. So this one is more like a Vim of those. Once you spend like 5 years perfecting your config and all that stuff, it's like really easy and really like fast to move.
Mm.
Yeah, so like I have like a rebase on like on a hotkey and all that stuff. So it's like yeah, I just can go to a branch and like press 10 buttons and do like a stuff that usually takes people weeks.
I just raw dog it with regular command line stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Or if I
Commands are
need
good.
anything visual, I like switch over to a visual thingy.
Yeah, commands are good because that's how you can like repeat it. So like if I do something and like it failed and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I need to like redo like 10 buttons again instead of just like repeating the last command or something like that.
God, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I totally get it. Uh okay, interesting. I
Maybe
guess
it
I guess no
disappeared
one
off of the face.
yeah, I
What is
guess no one
Vercel
cares about
hiding from us?
yeah, I guess no one cares about
Vercel
streaming.
doesn't want you to see this.
Okay. Okay. No one cares about streaming. That's what I get from it. Okay. Um. Anyway, so this all of this started forbidden technology. No, I just it was called something like AI.versal something, and it's like
You're not letting that one go, are you? Hold
uh
on. Let me.
it was
I'm
such
looking
a
at
cool
you.
demo. What I can do is just like try to search it in my like Chrome history, but I feel like it's not the best thing to do right on the stream. Okay,
Sorry,
so
I'm just having a
going
bite to eat in the meantime.
sure. Going back to the hydration thing. So we know that like if you're not doing React Server components, you have to do hydration. That's how we have like Svelte and I don't know like Remix, right? So like that, or like in Next.js you have this Next.js underscore somewhere like a JSON object. So it's like that's that's how we do client stuff. And on the on the kind of like Astro side, right? So what we do is that if we want to have if you want to have a component that is let's say like a hello component, right? And I just go and create a file that's called hello. I do underscores because otherwise it becomes a route, and that's kind of like
Yeah, I remember. I know that from Ben's stream on Thursday now.
so it's export function hello, and it's I don't know name, uh, and I do return div that has a name, something really simple like that, and I just need to import React. Okay, what's it complaining about? Yeah. Okay. We're not using setname, but okay. So now I go to Astro and I'm like, hey, I want to do hello. And it's like, sure, do hello. And like the funny part compared to React Server components, what happened here is that actually like I wouldn't be able to use that as a React Server component because it's using hooks. And
Hmm?
what happened here is that if I like do curl again or something like that, where is it? Yeah, so it starts here because it's like it needs. I mean, no, it actually doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, which one is it? No, it should be before. Okay, this one. Um, so this one is the React component, and it actually didn't
Mhm.
say any JavaScript by default. So it's like it's not going to hydrate this part. It's just that string, even though we used how do you call it? Hooks, because hooks are
Use
not
state.
allowed
Yeah.
inside of server components.
Well, yeah, but also like again, you could have done this with old style SSR too, couldn't you? Like you can just not hydrate. You can just not call hydrate on the client if you don't
Right.
want this.
Right. To hydrate this thing, you do client load, and
Mm,
it will now send kind of like more stuff.
yeah. Well, you
uh,
couldn't have done that with React, regular React SSR, like what I meant
yeah,
earlier.
yeah, yeah,
So
I know what
that is,
you.
yeah,
Yeah, you're talking about like skipping the script tag. That's the basic like remix argument,
yeah.
right? So now I send like much more stuff because it needs to know like what kind of island it is, like is it island that's going to show up when user interacts with it, is it island that shows up right on the load and all that stuff. But in the end it's like it's kind of like here, it's like this is where we create the actual HTML. But if we had some props or whatnot, like similar to like get server side props, so if we say I don't know, prefix. And so now we're going to add a prefix string, and it's going to prefix, and that's prefix that we put here. So it's like low now, something like that. So if we look at the code now, or that's actually like React thing, right? So like the
Yeah.
like separation between like static and dynamic parts. But where's the somewhere here? Yeah, it's like he. So this is where like the props go. So props prefix is going to be like he. It's just like HTML escaping all that stuff happening, but in a sense, this is kind of like get server side props. Uh, the thing about it is that I can in components I can do stuff like if Astro request method equals post and all that stuff. So like here I'm working on kind of like I'm working on like a page level, and some things are available to like any component. So if like if inside of that stuff, I can also read if the method is post. But on the page level, I can also like send headers or stuff like that that like
Mm,
modifies the request. So I have like a kind of like a write access to thing. But if I go kind of like deep enough in components, it's going to say, hey, like this is too late, right? So like if I'm working this inside of this component, this HTML is already sent. This is kind of like too
yeah.
late for you to like change the status code or something like
Yeah, of course. Mm. Yeah,
that.
I mean, this is quite cool. Mm. I haven't
Okay,
seen how you actually do islands in Astro before, so I appreciate that.
yeah. So
Like,
like why the islands, right? And the answer is if I'm going to if I'm going to skip on hydration, I I don't want the whole page to hydrate, and that's where the separation goes, right? Right. So like I have this thing, and because it's a SSR like SPA kind of like thing, right? So where it renders on the server, but it also works on the client. This this information has to be sent to both of them. So if I remove as SPA part, right? So like I don't have to send anything anymore. It's just like I turned it into a string, and that's it. That's the end of the story. But if I'm turning it into client component, this client component needs to have that data. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And Okay, I'm missing some messages in the chat, but like I'm on the roll. Oh, what happened?
What is going on?
Stream Element just
Oh,
like banned
damn.
someone. I'm sorry.
Damn. Well,
Can I unban him now?
I'm not, are you sure? That looked like a lot of spam.
No,
Uh,
he was talking before. I bet he like said some bad word and okay. I
you
hope
can
I
do view deleted methods. I got.
okay.
Uh, let's see what that was.
Yeah,
Huh.
maybe maybe he sent a link or something like that. So yeah, I'm sorry. I will try to unban you later. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I think he's not banned. It's just the messages got deleted. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe he just because I don't know. This is for the first time this happened. So like I don't know what to do here.
Sorry,
So
dude.
anyway, so yeah, so this is what I was going to show is if you go to this kind of like app that I created, right? So this app, it's actually one big island. There's kind of like most of
Hmm.
the application. I don't know how to like highlight it now, but like most of it is inside of the island. So that means that I need to hydrate like most of the page, right? But what I can do if I when I'm writing blog, I just don't put a block inside of client component. That's kind of like everything that I need to do, right? Yeah, as long as I don't do that, as long as the block text is not a client component, it's not going to be sent twice. And I can still have some interactivity, but it's going to be kind of like that. It's going to be that React Server component style where I can do it like that. So this is a server component and this is a client component, right? So if I go
Yep.
to that demo page, oh, I guess it's not now. It needs to like stream. Oh, I didn't use the children, right. So go here and let's. I guess let's do this. Okay, children, and I just put children here, and I put children. Okay, Copilot, where are you? Okay. So yeah, now it's probably not going to stream
Let's
because
see. Let's see.
yeah, it's like it's waiting now. Yeah, because
What's it waiting for now? Oh,
it
is this
can't.
our iterator?
Yeah, it can't SSR this without resolving the stuff inside because it's like this thing is like not the end of the HTML anymore. So just render it to string kind of like in React. I guess it's
Yeah.
just like not working. I guess this is something that Astro could improve, but I don't know they care. But we can move this away, I
Well, with
guess.
I mean, with children, if it is because right, because I think the situation there was basically you have some arbitrary wrapper that hasn't resolved yet. And so you can't really do anything with its contents because how you render the children like depends on what the wrapper does. So I think with this kind of thing, I don't think anyone has a good solution for it,
Yeah,
right? Because if you're blocked on the level of the thing that accepts the children, you can't do anything smart about it, or not a lot at least. Well, in RSC, I guess what they would do is they would probably send the children down maybe in some instances, and then the rest would stream in, but I don't know if that would be a huge benefit,
no,
honestly.
in IRC
uh,
it's going to work because you're streaming out of order, and it's just like it's some kind
yeah.
of like, hey, suspense marker here, and just like I will put more stuff
Oh,
later.
yeah, but I meant specifically the thing that where that like the being blocked on the wrapper, the doesn't matter. You're right. Of course, out of order does help a lot here.
Uh-huh.
But then you would have to use JavaScript.
Yeah. So this is what I want to show is that if I go to like React components debugger, right? I have like this React.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sina is saying like I didn't say anything bad. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like just the stream elements saw something. Yeah, sorry.
Prefab.
Anyway, so we have this hello component which is React component. And as children, it has this static HTML component. This is the component that
Mhm.
Astro team created, right? This is their way to hide behind it, hide inside of it some stuff. So if you're talking about blog, that blog is going to be just a static HTML client component, and that component could be written in a way. There was this. Okay, I'm like I'm talking about things at the same time. Anyway, so this is how they do it. They create this special component that has just like a value, right? Just like HTML, and you don't need to hydrate that component. So this component will it has some kind of like logic of where it when it boots up on the client it will just like find its html that's already on the page and like bring it into client component. um
That's interesting. I'm
yeah
gonna look how they do that later because that sounds interesting.
yeah, exactly. And I first heard about it uh, I don't remember describe.
Because like if it's like if the React debugger shows a value of a
Uh-huh.
string in there, how is that not just like a regular hydration payload? They have to pull some magic there, I think. Um,
Okay, I can't find that link, but there was I forgot how they call it HTTP 203 or whatever, like the podcast where Surma and Jake, or I don't remember the names. I'm sorry. Like one of them were saying, "Hey, this is like thing that we were doing for Squoosh." So Squoosh, how do you spell it? This website. It's written in Next.js, and they were saying, "Hey, we moved this icon into SVG, but now this icon we need to send it twice because it's a like SSR in Next.js." And what they try to do is that when the page is hydrating, they would just like find it in HTML and pull it. And I actually tried that, and that thing works. And they were saying like, "Hey, we like created this pull request for Squoosh," and I was like, "Oh, I need to see how they did it." And it's like they just didn't merge it. I actually like wrote one of them and asked like, "Hey, you're talking about like this thing in a podcast, but like it's not there." He's like, "No, I guess it's not there." But this is the kind of like hydration problems that you're trying to solve, and this is like the hydration solutions that kind of like Astro came up with, right? And uh, we probably should be like closing the stream soon, but I wanted to talk about like one more kind of like technical thing, and
mm,
that's where I think I tweeted about it, but let me try to kind of like reproduce it again.
is it about like does RSC hydrate or something?
Yes. So this is like the silly things that don't let me sleep at night.
Yeah.
How or why or like what is happening when we're hydrating the head? uh, head
Hold on, hold on.
tags.
Which parts? I mean,
So
head tags. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, so finish the question, sorry.
So this page, and I tested it like in some other places, but it's just easier to pick it up here. Um, so this page, it has like OG tags. So it's like preview images for your like social media. I guess it's just like
Yeah,
a static image, and because how RSCs work, and again, if you watch that like video from 2 years ago, they don't hydrate anything. They will send you all of this like meta tags in the head where you like expect them, but they will also send it. Oh, okay, I broke the search thing. But they will also send it as a hydration step.
yeah. Like they do hydrate. They absolutely do hydrate. That's
Yeah,
not yeah.
and if
And so
you
what's the question?
yeah, if you navigate between pages like that, okay, what's happening? Oh, I disabled JavaScript. Oops.
Whoops.
Okay, so now if I go to overview, hmm, maybe it's already professional it, but yeah, let's create an API case. Okay, it goes to API case, and if we look at this JSX again, it sends OG image again.
Yeah, so I guess what's happening in this case is okay, hold on, because I may be getting ahead. So what do you want to talk about here? What the why or the how or like oh hold on, my AirPods are about to die. Let me go switch headphones real quick.
Sure,
Uh,
no problem. I will try to read the chat that we missed for this long
yeah.
time. How do I restart the message now? This is bad. Okay, sends the same JSX whether it's first load or not. Yeah, so we're getting there. This is I think this is the big RSC conspiracy. Again, it's more of a like a marketing kind of like mismatch than the actual problem. But what I got from I don't know when you're going to be back in terms of headphones. So just uh, just try to let me know. Are you back? I don't hear you. So that's the problem. Yeah, let me switch to to this screen. Otherwise, I just like I don't see you as well. Okay, it looks like you connected the wired headphones, but maybe like you didn't switch. Oh yeah, you probably need to go to like guest star on Twitch and just like switch the devices where you have like your camera and microphone button. Okay, I don't
Does
hear
this work
anything.
now?
Okay, I think it started working.
Hold on. Um,
Okay, um, I
Do
will
you still
try.
not hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you, and even
Okay,
JC said
okay.
that.
So that's finally fixed. Okay.
Okay, which is
Oh God, yeah. This
uh,
I love my AirPods, but switching between the like they just die so fast. Unfortunately, that's the thing. Marketing mismatch. Sorry.
okay. So yeah, so the marketing mismatch is that like that video was all about, hey, look at the server components. We are not hydrating them. Isn't that cool? And it's like, first of all, no one knows what hydration is. Like no one knows like why it's cool. But the biggest problem is that of course they hydrate. Like wow.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like the miscommunication here is like the you don't send the JavaScript to hydrate, that's like to actually run the component to the client. You
Yeah.
still need React to be aware of like what's going on with the DOM so that it can do all of its dynamic stuff with like, updating the page in place
while preserving state, which is the main cool trick of RSC, right? And which is of course what next router is built around and all of that thing, all of that kind of jazz. It still needs to, but even if it doesn't send the JS for a component because it's a server component runs server side, it still needs to sort of, before booting up, walk through the DOM and reconcile it with the JSON version of the same thing to know
Right.
what's going on. But so hydrate basically. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. We
Yeah,
call it
so
hydration.
I think that the root cause of the, you know, of the confusion here is that previously those hydration and the JS, like sending the JS for a component, were inseparable. Like they always happened together. And in this model, you have a thing that you do kind of hydrate, but not in the same way that you had to render the component again. It's just like it's just the divs, just all of that stuff without the JS. And you still need to kind of hydrate them so that React can manage them, but you don't have the component there, right? That's I think the disconnect, that the two things that previously always went together, now you're doing one but not the other, right?
Yeah. So the way that I think about it now is that, say you're doing like a server. I don't know. Let's just call it a div, right? So
Yeah.
let's just call it a div, and let's just say that it has, I don't know, like a title. And then I have a client component, and I have like a prop, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. So the way that it worked before is that your root could not be kind of like a div. It has to be it has to be some kind of like client root. And
Yeah.
the way that you would send it over the wire was like, hey, I have client.js here, and maybe it has some props. So I don't know, like URL equals slash, and this is kind of like the information that you need to do to boot kind of like next.js, right? So this is the get initial props or whatever, and this is just like your bundle for this URL. So it's like they're going to create different bundles for
Mhm.
different URLs. So that's like so that it's like if I'm on the landing page, I don't need like dashboard JavaScript. So this client JavaScript is going to be like a one file, and this prop is going to be kind of like specific for this page, and this is what you send from server to client. It's basically kind of like instruction that has two parts. Does that so far like make sense?
But is this, hold on, because are we saying this as an analogy to what we do in RSC or what we did before RSC?
Before, so it's like it's
Okay, okay, okay,
next
okay, yeah.
12 something, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so this is the only way to talk this is the only way to kind of like communicate between your server and your
Yeah.
in a sense, this like client route, it's basically a router, right? It's like it's the thing that will do something. It will like show like different components and all that stuff, like depending on the route and stuff. And what happening is next 13.4. I forgot, but it like this thing, it can have a server root now, and what you can send is you can send like a I don't know what the syntax I'm going to use, but let's just say I can send a div that has like this title, and
Yeah.
maybe those are the children.
That's just passed as a prop. So this would be like in RSC. Yeah, that's exactly it. Um,
So so the kind of like the difference that happened is that this scheme was really simple. That like it only had two fields in a sense. It's like JSON for props and URL for like the bundle that can start it. Now I can send any JSX because like this thing, what was unpacking kind of like this thing was like a script that Next.js wrote, and that script would go get all of this information and then call like a render function, right? So it's like
Yeah.
it's not, it wasn't
You would
part of
have
React,
get server-side props in there too, right? But
right? So
there was
I'm
a
saying that this is kind of like the get server
yeah,
side
yeah.
prop. I mean, right? I see what you're saying.
Mm,
Yeah, but for this one, I'm like I don't have any props here, so it's
yeah.
yeah. So this is kind of like the props. um, so what happened now is that React became kind of like smarter, and now it can take this thing, and so this client JS before it was just like that's where the root is, like that's the only place where you can go. I mean, maybe like important client. I don't know how to like exactly say that. But now this thing, it knows uh, it knows where to get bundle for each component, each client component, instead of just for the root one.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so this code, it became a server component, right? So it's like this is we're not running JavaScript. We are this is like JSON, right? It's already there. It's already kind of like transformed, compiled, like whatever you're going to call it. But it's like it's kind of like as good as HTML because like in Astro terms, that component would be like static HTML. I'm just joking, but that's
No, 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 no. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
uh,
Uh, I
that's
think
almost like a
serialized is the word you're looking for, because really this is like about serializing a React tree, right? This is what RC is about. Um,
right. But like the step that needed to happen here was render. I don't know, root render. Uh, uh, and it's I guess like yeah, let's just call import client component from I guess let's client root. Yeah, import client root from client JS, and then type client JS and props like something like that. We didn't need document body. So this was like the hydration. Yeah, so it's not render, it's
mhm.
hydrate,
Yeah,
right? So this was the way to kind of like make your app work in Next.js. So now here in React Server Components world, uh, you kind of skip this step
yeah,
and you just do root hydrate just like this, like all of this. And
yeah. So
React,
what you would do
uh-huh.
is you would get a tree. It's usually called like a tree, right? Because again, because it is just a serialized JSX tree, kind of. And so you just get a, like for example, for either you parse it from those next F chunks you've seen, or you get them from a request, and you but and React just gives you a function that's like, hey, please deserialize this into like a tree, which would be what you would write out like in the original JSX, basically. That's how you can think about it. Please deserialize this JSON stuff into that original tree and just render it. That's
Yeah.
kind of conceptually what happens.
So my kind of like thinking about it is that we need to imagine that there's now like this hydrate RC function.
But that's the thing. There's not. It
Yeah,
goes to a regular root.hydrate. That's the thing.
yeah, exactly. And this function like that's that's like one other spicy thing about like is React a framework or is React a library? So like if React was a framework, it would have had a function called hydrate RC. Because it's a library, you have your hydrator.c function is a function that takes some JSX. It will prepare client component equals like I don't know, dehydrate or like resolve
It's
maybe even.
create from stream or something. You
Okay.
generally do create from stream, and then you pass it a streaming thing because everything is basically you to this thing you would like those streaming payloads, right? Streaming RSC payloads. You take a stream of that, you pass it to create from stream, and that returns you basically jsx.element, not a component, just an element, right? Which is why we call that a tree generally. Um,
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that there is this step that will try to convert whatever there is like in script tags, whatever that was kind of like whatever like the hydration data that we got,
yeah.
and it will try to create just a regular kind of like just a regular like this thing, right? Just a regular JavaScript component, not JavaScript component, just regular. Um, okay, I forgot like all the terminology here, but so hydrate function it takes JSX as an argument, right? It takes if you just run React hydrate div, right? Let's say render, okay. If you render div, it will show it, but like div is going to be compiled into like type div and so on, right?
Yeah.
So the render function or like hydration function, they can only work on already synchronous, already like resolved JSX, except for parts where you can put like suspense boundaries, right? You can say,
Hmm.
hey, like once you're here and you don't know what to do, like wait. But it has to be already there. It's not like a render or hydrate function. They don't work on a stream. They only work on on an existing thing. What stream can do is that it can update that existing thing and call render function again.
I don't think that like that's not quite how it works because like with this thing with how because that's what create the magic happens within create from stream
Uh-huh.
basically. It's like how do I explain it? I need to make a visualization for this, I guess. But it's like because you have this stream coming down that says like okay so this is like and that describes all these divs and how they sit with one within the other and create from stream or create from readable stream in this instance. I think the real function is thanks Jesse. What it does is it adds all the suspense stuff for you kind of so like you maybe like the first chunk is the root so it knows okay so we're starting out with a div and then there's another div and then there's a hole, right? Because that's how those chunks work because then you get like they can reference each other and so the first chunk can say I've got a hole in the middle but I know there's a div before, right? And so
Uh-huh.
create from stream turns like deserializes as far as it can into a tree, and for this hole it just puts a suspense in there which
Uh-huh.
will resolve later, right? So it's right,
Yeah, but how
and
does
as
that
more stuff keeps coming in,
uh-huh.
it keeps deserialized as more parts of the tree come in. It it builds the tree, right? So and because of all the fun stuff in React 18 with concurrent rendering, you don't actually need to have all of that tree available instantly.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it kind of just works like because of all the concurrent, yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. Because of the concurrent rendering magic, this is for React, this is kind of indistinguishable from a regular tree like what you would render normally with suspending components. They just build it in a slightly tricky way, but I think like React itself doesn't even know that this is a like the thing you call there doesn't even know that's the case. What exits out of create from fet kind of like is just normal React stuff. There's some tricks under the hood, but it's like it's in a sense I think yeah that's the right way to put it. It's indistinguishable from a normal React tree that you would normally build via suspense or something. Uh, it's just and that is kind of tricky and mind bending.
Yeah, so because I said like I started working with React like before a lot of things existed, this used to be exactly kind of like perfect way to write React back in the day. You will have
Mm.
some kind of like counter, and you would do counter uh, add
Mm-hmm.
event listener click increment, right? So like this thing, it change some props and it will just re-render everything. So like the magic of React, the way that React was sold to us is that you see how cool the API to update data is. You just call the same function with new arguments and we will reconcile everything for you. It's like no matter how kind of like deep it is, no matter how many things it has, we can do something like that. And okay, so this is kind of like this is why I'm thinking about like streaming stuff coming in. And I feel like, oh, but like once I get the new chunk, once like this suspense is resolved, am I just resolving some promise that like React already knows about, which is kind of like that's how React works, or do I get some new data and I just like call render function again? Because I think there are probably like ways where like both of them work, and I'm not sure kind of like where one starts and the other ends.
I'm not sure I quite get that distinction to be honest, but promises React knows or not. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's say that this client component like this prop 1 to 3 is actually like it's a promise that returns 1 to 3, right? So it's like so we have to
Oh,
put
oh,
suspense
that's
here.
another thing. Passing promises, streaming down promises. That's another funky trick. Uh,
Yeah, so there are like two ways of thinking about it. Is one is I just render the app as it is before promise is resolved, and then once it's resolved, I'm like re-rendering it again. Or the other thing is that just the client component 3 already has like a thing that is waiting for that promise to be resolved. That's probably how I
yeah,
wanted to ask this question.
the second thing is like
Hmm.
it already has a thing
Right.
to
So this
that's gonna resolve. Yeah.
okay. So this thing, like the JSX, it has to be already kind of like a yeah, just like it has to be like a real object, right? Before we can
Yep.
we can call it. But that object could have references or promises and all that stuff that is like
Yep.
will going to be updated later on.
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
that's what create from stream from readable stream job is. The other fun thing it does, because that's the part that also like turns clients references into actual components,
Uh
right?
huh.
Because of course like you get this RSC payload saying, hey, so this is at this point like this was a client component here and load the code for that, load the code for id 123. And
Right.
what's inside create from readable stream, what they actually do is basically they do react.lazy, and then they do that webpack require chunk id blah 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 blah, but they literally just wrap it in a react lazy.
Uh-huh,
So
interesting.
well, not literally, but they create the same type of node that React Lazy would create.
Uh-huh.
Like if you look in the payload, and you'll see, you've probably, if you've spent any time looking at them, you'll see that client components are always like L1, L3, L whatever. If you look for dollar
Yeah.
L, maybe, yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I see.
the L stands for lazy. Uh, and this just means,
Oops.
yeah, this is
Where's it?
gonna be, this is like
Okay,
with,
I
okay, this
guess I
is
closed it,
lazy
but
component, with ID3. And yeah, under the hood, they really just deserialize this stuff into basically suspense and React Lazy. And so the tree kind of has this asynchronicity built into it already. And it's just gonna, and of course they do some quite convoluted stuff to get all of this to work, because it's, building up these self-referencing promises and whatnot. It's tricky business. So it's not quite straightforward to
uh-huh.
implement. But basically, yeah, they do it. They they deserialize that kind of thing, and they all the streaming stuff goes into basically just React primitives, which is pretty fucking cool if you ask me. Like the fact that suspense and lazy basically allow you to do this kind of thing
Yeah.
of, let's make a tree that streams in. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and going back to my like joke about React being a library, the whole thing is that like this kind of like happens kind of like outside of React. This
Yeah.
um, that like connection between like all the like how do you get all of those lazy modules and all of that stuff that happens kind of like outside, and like React is just like, hey, I know how to render stuff, I know how to how to like when route changes, if I just get a new tree and I just like call the render function again with a new tree, like everything is going to work kind of like magically.
Yep.
There is no, um, in a sense, I can just like take kind of like old React that didn't have any of those features and figure out kind of like way that is going to be kind of like pretty similar. Maybe it's not going to have streaming or something like that, but like it's going to be, as long as you're using this kind of like two step of like turn turn stuff into like valid React tree and just call render function again, it will do all the how do I call it? I forgot, reconciliation, and it will keep all the state that needs to be kept. It will like reset stuff if like the key has changed and all of that stuff. So it's like the technology itself, the React library is like is basically kind of like didn't have to change too much for you to have, for frameworks, because React is a library, right? For frameworks to add this RC support.
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to the question we originally asked like 3 hours ago, which was like, where does RSC end and where does next begin? And this is kind of the thing, right? Like, React gives you the serialize the thing, and of course, like as a framework, it's your business to handle getting the stream there. Like, for, if you actually, like, if you want to look into it, we can go to get the, to GitHub to look at Tangle's code, because this is pretty
Uh-huh.
straightforward actually. Like, this is, a file with like 200 lines. So go packages core source, yeah, it's a bit of stuff, runtime, and then client TSX. That's the client entry point.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And you scroll down to the bottom, because then you'll see, yeah. See, like this is, so line 106 is where the fun starts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, see, so this is what I was talking about. So for example, what the part I need to handle, like RSC chunks is my variant of underscore underscore next f,
Uh-huh.
basically. The thing where they were like putting all those little scripts that add payloads,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
New
that's
chunks of, yeah, of
yeah,
stream data.
so basically what that thing does is it does some wacky shit to, like, create a stream that's gonna collect all those chunks, right? And just turn it into a nice readable stream.
Sure.
And then you just pass it to create from readable stream, and
Uh-huh.
then you get a tree. Well, you get a promise of a tree, right? But initially it's a promise of a tree, and you can await it or you can do whatever. Um, because of course React is very big on not blocking you. So it's like, it gives you a promise and you can start doing other stuff, and then, it's a thenable. But anyway, then it's just a thing that you can pass, like, as children, basically. I think I go through like a use component on line 122
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
that just does, calls the use hook. But essentially, this initial server tree thenable is a promise of JSX.element, right? That's what I mean. And then you can just render it. Um, so like it's
So do you does that mean that you are waiting on promise kind of like already inside of React, already kind of like in
Yep.
that how do you not destroy your existing kind of like
So
data on the page?
so the thing is, this is the entry point. This runs only once. This runs only for the initial render.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the path for the path you go through when navigating is
Mm-hmm.
a bit different. That lives inside, because in this instance, it's like, because you do a proper hydrate only for the first one,
Right.
right? Because the first one is an HTML page with RSC chunks mixed in. Whereas if you do, like, again, like Next does, for the, like, if you do a client side navigation, quote unquote, where you just call the server and, like, take what it gives you and display it without you know as an SPA navigation, I mean, a client side routing,
Uh-huh.
whatever you call it. um, for the other ones, you just get the React server-side payload, the RSC payload, and just, like, again, display it. But this stuff here happens only once, is what I
Yeah,
mean.
so what I was thinking is that um, without using something like use, if
Yeah.
if this client router component, like if when it's like not resolved, if it returns like a null or something, right? So like the hydration will like fail, but because it doesn't return null, but it returns like a failed promise, right? Or not failed, but like pending promise,
Hmm.
like React will wait for that promise to be resolved before trying to reconcile like existing
Yep.
HTML.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so we can go here from like two things. So like one thing is I'm curious to see like how like the routing happens, right? So the other is that my kind of like point about like is it hydration or not, right? Because like server components
It
that
is.
do not hydrate.
No,
um,
they do. They do. They do. They just don't like. Ex- they do. They just do it a bit differently, because you don't have that JS of the component. You just need to sort of
Right. So the
hide.
difference between like like client component, right, is that like this thing is a function
Yeah,
basically. Like it's not a string, but it's like it's a function. I
like a
mean,
dollar or something. Dollar client
I turn it
component.
like here is like the thing that turns kind of like strings into functions,
Yeah.
right? So it's like once I call this thing here. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Like this is like some pseudocode. Like I'm not sure how it should happen, but like the idea is that uh, like here it was just like some reference, like I don't know, like L1
Hmm.
or whatever. Um, but here we turned it into a function, and now this is the function that will this is the function that will return JSX, while this is already a JSX. Like
Yeah.
like the difference between client components is that they need to be called to get JSX, but this one is kind of like already called, right? So
Yeah.
in a sense, it's going to be like exactly the same as if it was a function that returned thing. But again, I used React before JSX was a thing, so I'm really comfortable with this syntax. So this is like the joke I'm trying to, not the joke, but I guess like analogy that I'm trying to come up with. There is this thing like in, I don't know, like in logistics or whatnot, but uh, you can imagine that you have uh, I don't know, you have like a factory that produces, I don't know, like Coke cans, right? So like the like aluminum things themselves. So they bring in like a 1 kilogram of aluminum, and they get like 2 cases of cans, right? So this is a
Mhm.
process turns uh, that turns kind of like something small into something big. And you have uh, I don't know what's the other one where you have I don't know, like a raw materials, and you need to get like gold out of them. So it's like the amount
Mhm.
of you get in and amount of you get out is kind of like different, right? And it could gain bulk or gain weight, like a, I don't know, if you're like selling like a sugar drinks, right? You're bringing in a bit of sugar, and you're just like getting a tap water, and you're getting like a bottle that is like heavy.
Mm.
So it's like the closer that you do that to the store where people buying it, the easier it is for you, because it's like it's easier to move sugar for a longer distances than to move like a already done like a Coke bottle, right? So this is like a thing that I want to like come up with, like the right way to think about it. And in some ways, um, this process of like running server components, it could get both ways kind of like as well. So it's like if you have a function that takes I don't know, like date, and just like repeats it 10,000 times, the
Yeah.
existing but like the resulting JSX is going to be 10,000 times bigger than the input. Does that kind of like make sense?
Yeah, 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 of course, of course. And this is a cool thing. This is a cool thing. And this connects to, again, my favorite analogy of macros, because
Uh-huh.
macros are fun, but they can also, because you just make this thing and it generates the code for you, which is all
Uh-huh.
fun and good, but it might generate a shit ton of code for you, right?
Right. Or like
So
wrong chord, or like unoptimal, like that is.
not even that, but still, in Rust or in C++, this is a kind of a thing that happens with monomorphization. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
how familiar you are with that. Do you know? You know what I'm talking about? Or like,
Very vaguely. I didn't do any C++.
because the thing is when you have a generic function, right? A generic function, like, I don't know, but it's
Uh-huh.
generic over some type.
Yes,
And
some
what
of
Rust
the collection or
does,
something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what Rust does, and C++ tends to, is generate as many copy, like specialize that function to as many copies as you need. Like, if you in your program you use it for ints and for strings, you're gonna
Uh-huh.
probably get two copies of the function, one for
Sure.
ints, one for strings, right? So it's kind of like macros in that sense. But what I mean is, you had the small thing and you
Uh-huh.
monomorphized it to make it fast at runtime, because it tends to be fast, but it like made it explode in size because you
Made
can get.
more code.
It's kind of like that. It's a loose analogy, but it's similar with macros. Like, they can generate a
Yeah,
lot
so
of code.
so
So I know what you're getting at.
the way that I want to put it into like so you have a component that takes like a prop that is like a text, right? And it multiplies it by 1,000. So would you send this component as a client component or as a server component? Because as a
Probably
server
would work
component,
better as a client component, right?
yeah, exactly. As a server component, it will send you like this heavy Coke bottle instead of sending you the recipe and the sugar, right? So like
Yeah,
client component is it can repeat that string 10,000 times kind of like easily, and you're going to send like less stuff over the wire if you do this. Um, and I think like there's like a I don't know if it's like a bug or just like people just like having this issue, but like they will create some collection like messages, right? And they want to render a message, and instead of sending like the message itself, they send like messages array and just like a index of the message in that array.
mm-hmm.
And if you have 100 messages, you are going to send first message with index 1 and all 100 messages like as serialized as props. And then you're going to do that for second one and the third one. So it's like you're
Yeah,
instead of sending 100 messages once, you're sending 100 messages 100 times. So it's like those things are, yeah, just this is basically like a new thing that you have to kind of like think about it, right? And it's not, we don't have kind of like intuition yet for like what is better, because this this thing about like uh, industries or like weight gaining or weight reducing industries is like they basically have kind of like formulas where your factory has to be depending on like where your raw resources are and where your like market is. So like it's just basically like a
interesting.
kind of like a solved graph. So I don't know if I have like a, yeah, there's just like, yeah, so it's like if you have like two resources and like both of them are heavy, this is like where you have to like put your factory in and all that stuff. So it's like people already solved that. we just need to
Yeah,
we just need to solve that for reactor components again. And it's like, and I think that's the problem, right? It's like how do you like explain all of that stuff? How do you kind of like sell all of this stuff? That's why all those flashy but not true slogans come up from. That's kind of like my kind of like jokey
yeah,
way of looking
I
at
know.
it.
I know. Because of course, like you're right, that this whole thing is basically you're trading off space for time, I guess. Like you either it's like, you can make something a table, or you can, like, of all the outputs, or you can make it a function that generates, the output on demand. And so the trade-off is basically, what's cheaper? Is it cheaper to zip over the whole thing and not have to run any code, or is it cheaper to just send a small thing? I think Dan or somebody had a example of this with some kind of code highlighter, I think,
Hmm.
where running the code highlighter as an RSC and, like,
Yeah, yeah,
basically rendering it to HTML ended up actually making the page super heavy because of how many little things like the highlighted code
yeah.
required.
I
And
actually remember that. Yeah, and the thing is like, I think he ended up on something like in the middle. He said, "Oh, it's
yep,
actually like better to send like this intermediate representation over the wire and
yeah,
just like,
exactly, exactly.
uh-huh, and just have like
But this is it, yeah.
two functions that like one is preparing that thing and the other is like consuming it."
Yeah. Yeah, but this is the choice, this is the trade-off, and this is the thing that people are gonna, that everybody working with this is gonna have to learn, that this is not like a blanket thing where you're like, oh, everything, like, okay, for many cases, probably like rendering everything to RSC is gonna be fine, because if SSRing the thing was fine, then rendering it via, because of course with SSR you were already repeating that string 10,000 times to
Yeah,
use your
sending
example,
HTML,
right?
but now you're
So
also
it's
sending.
kind of the same thing.
Uh-huh.
It's a okay, it's multiplied by a constant factor of 2, but
Yeah.
roughly speaking, it's the same order of magnitude, right? And so it's kind of the same issue of if you wouldn't SSR something before, you probably don't want to RSC it either, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it might just explode in size and it ends up that waiting for all of that payload to come through is actually much slower than just like loading a tiny bit of JS on the client. Um, which I also think like sometimes might be missing from all the zero JS people, but that's just a little that's my little joke. Uh,
Yeah, I think Zero.js. Yeah, if you going to like bring it back to Astro, the thing, um, because you were like SSRing it anyway, you're going to send that HTML. So you're not sending it twice, right? But you're sending it once at least. And
yeah.
there are some optimizations where it's actually like makes sense to again like to generate to keep some of this stuff like not SSR and
Yeah.
show a spinner while you're like multiplying it 10,000 times. And the good thing about Astro is that it's not like zealous about those like zero
Oh yeah, yeah,
kilobytes.
yeah, definitely. Because
You
it
can
does give you the
always
islands.
yeah, you can always switch to like any island that you like, right? Or anything that is cool today. Maybe like HTMX.
Yeah, I know. I'm just pointing fun at the slogan of Zero.js because it like I know it's not I know it's not what it means. So hold on.
Yeah, the cool thing about Zero.js is it's about zero hydration, right?
Yeah.
And if I was able to find that website, that would be really cool because that website it shows you the um, uh, what was it? Streaming is that it? OpenAI. Okay. I might not have like the link to the. No, I don't have the link to the original one. But what is cool about that streaming demo is that GPT streams by like I don't know like pieces of like 5 bytes, maybe like smaller, and those 5 bytes because they're inside of like a script tag, all of them turn into like at least like 30 bytes like script tags in Next.js. So like the HTML payload for that Next.js website was I don't know, like 10 times at least, like bigger than than the one from Astro because Astro doesn't need JavaScript. That's the like because it streams in order. So it's just like a different trade-offs and all that stuff. And this gives me the idea that either like React is going to add islands at some point, or like islands frameworks are going to support RC, and this way you can get best of like all worlds, where you can get RC kind of like DX of like, hey, I just want to put this whatever like database or whatnot like no matter how deeply in the tree I am, and I can like I can like throw a promise and like wait for it and all that stuff. So like you can kind of like tweak it as much as you want, but you can also just like uh, you can also uh, switch into like island mode, and it's like no, I don't want to hydrate my blog. That's silly, right?
I think I also remember someone, someone from the React team and one of the 10 billion threads about it, um, saying that like they might support a mode in the future where they don't require like basically duplicating the same thing, right?
Uh-huh.
Because that is like a kind of a thing. You know, it might be some probably see it as a issue, big issue with RSC that you need to send the thing twice. I think you're not a fan of that, and I think what they were saying is basically this is something that can be added. Like it's a thing you can add as an improvement because it's not fun. There's nothing that fundamentally says, I think, for most of the things, why this couldn't be something like I think like Solid does, right? Where you like put a bunch of comments next to the HTML
Mm-hmm.
and just hide like and instead of requiring this whole RSC payload in the shape that it currently is, just boot off of the HTML that's there. I
Right,
remember
similar
someone saying
to.
something about that. Um,
Uh,
I can look for the tweet later if you want, but I think I
uh-huh.
think I think people are gonna take this in all sorts of directions. There's nothing preventing you usage of RSC in an island context. You can just you can just do the same thing they're currently doing to render this little bit of React, but you just have to feed it an RSC payload, and then it's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
do the same thing. So um, you can do it any kind of way you want, and I think that's a really cool thing about this whole thing, that it's really quite flexible, and I think we really so far we've only really seen a next take on this, right? And I think people are gonna come up with all sorts of weird shit with this.
Yeah. And
Mm,
yeah, so I was going to say that like that's like static HTML kind of like component that Astro does, right? So like at least you can do something like that that is like
yeah,
a kind of like a marker, right? It's like yeah, I will just like pick it up from here. I don't need to like send it twice. So anyway, I think we're like completely out of time, and uh, hopefully that all of this stuff is going to like end in a um, some cool kind of like merging of all of the like the best ideas and all that stuff. So like for the islands, I was going to like mention it. It's like there's no such thing in Astro at least. There's no such thing as like uh, updating like islands on navigation, right? So they don't do client navigation. So like,
yeah,
so what we do and Prompts is France is like all of this stuff is getting picked up by React Router. So if I click on prompts, that React Router is the one that is responsible for like URL changing, for like new content to be loaded and all that stuff. So it's like it's not like Astro doesn't do this by themselves. They have like their new view transition experiments and all that stuff, which is like fine for websites. It's not. I don't see how that's going to work for applications. But it's funny how like all of them have cool features and some limitations, and like Ryan Carniato is solid trying to kind of like connect everything together, where he has like island router and all that stuff that allows you to have uh, they don't use like RC payloads, they just send like a raw HTML over the wire. But
yeah. With comments, that's what I meant. There's like there's because there's extra metadata they need, I think, to to hydrate. But yeah. But they do boot off of HTML and not this sideband thing like RSC does. Yeah. Mm.
right, I'm talking about like the client navigation kind of like after that. So when you client
Ah,
navigate
okay.
in React, it will send like this, but they
Yep.
also send HTML here, which is like
Ah, okay, okay, okay. So they do it like the good old days of
Yeah,
doing a post to the server, which gives you back a new content, and then your jQuery splices that into the documents to replace the thing that changed.
yeah.
Ah,
You're describing HTMX. That's not jQuery is
no, jQuery came to mind because I remember working with a lot, like with a code base that was based exactly like on that. And like it was a booking system, and you had like these little popover cards, and those
yeah.
would come in as like new bits of HTML for this thing. And we're we're circling back to that world in funny ways. But it's I don't know if you were in that thread, but like I think Tom Sherman was tweeting about this the other day, and I think someone had this spiral diagram, right? Like we're
uh,
revisiting the what I don't know. I recall so I made a version of that from memory. Uh, I don't know where it was from, but it's like we revisit the same places, but we're like we're not going in circles. We're like moving further along in like expressive power. So, but we do revisit similar areas, right? And this
right.
is
And every
what it
time
is.
we are like, oh, but like I already know how this thing works, so I don't want to like lose this kind of like functionality. So this is like I started to play with this thing. So this is the React tab, so where you can click around and stuff, and
Mm.
it's kind of like create React app style. So without JavaScript, it's like a blank page. So I started to look into just HTMX. So like when you click on this button, you see oh, it doesn't update URL, but it could update URL. So you see like this kind of like SPA style
Yeah.
navigation, but all of it does, it just goes to a server, asks HTML, it just like flops it into like body basically, right? So
RC baby.
yeah, exactly. Like it's the same thing. Yeah. So this thing and like and this thing is basically the same. It could be. Yeah. It's anyway. So let's close this thing. Do you have anything to I don't know promote anything to show apart from? I mean, yeah. So Tangle, 54 stars could be more. Uh,
Oh, could be. I still gotta, if you see there's a pull request open in there to finally implement server actions,
that's
because
cool.
I haven't finished that. Yeah, and like I made it ages ago, and then I forgot what I didn't do, and I'm left a note to self to finish it, and then I'm very grateful I did because I would have forgotten it again. But other than this, I don't really have anything to plug. I don't think, not right now. But I don't know. What's the space? Maybe I'll come up with something clever there.
Yeah, that's your Twitter. Uh,
That is me.
can you say it out loud so that people can
Yeah.
appreciate?
Lubię owoce. It's lubię owoce. I like fruit.
That's cool.
Uh, that's it. Um, yeah, thank you so much for having me here. Like I said at the start, I've never done anything like this, so I think like this is a brilliant way to start my streaming career.
Oh yeah.
And
By the way, speaking of streaming careers, I need to go to okay, I need to go to Twitch chat
yeah,
and write shout out. For what's
was it like
it?
SO?
No, that's like a
Oh,
that's the
thank you.
Twitch native way, so that like everyone who is
Ah,
watching
okay, okay,
on like
okay, okay.
on a device, they will have this thing. Am I even following you?
I don't use my Twitch for anything. I literally only use it to watch. I've done, but follow me in case I ever get in. Like if I get it into my head to do a stream, I might invite you back actually. So You're gonna know, but there's nothing interesting on my twits. Twitter is where it's at.
Yeah, and it doesn't have any problems because it's written in Scala. Yeah, thank you
Uh,
so much for jumping in on this. Because you're in Europe, that's like not the greatest hours, but yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for jumping in. And I hope that people can get like a lot of information, a lot of stuff. Uh, yeah, to learn. I mean, yeah, we learn a lot, and hope people appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for joining me. And yep, that's going to be it for today.